Hi, folks. It turns out I kind of enjoyed doing the audio last week, and I realized how much more enjoyable it was than doing videos. And I decided maybe that would be a way to bring some ideas across every few weeks for folks. So I thought I would try another one this week if you'd like to listen. Um, Today I was kind of taken by a New Yorker cartoon I saw that had two women sitting on a couch, and one of them was saying, "I can't wait to forget everything I learned about myself during quarantine." And it was funny because that's kind of just the opposite of what I'd been thinking myself. Maybe it's just me, but I don't think so. I've been noticing almost a dread of the great opening up. And while it did hurt to disconnect and rewire for online everything, to not be able to freely meet in public and bike to my favorite beach concession or write at my favorite local coffee shops or go to films in public or this or that or a million other things that were hard. There were surprises in this experience. And there is just more to the story than loss that we keep talking about. We're going to have to admit, some of us at least, that there was gain. That some of the things we were doing were actually not all that joyous, even though they sort of seemed to be. That we were exhausted from the contact that we were having. That we were frenzied sometimes in our incessant movement. Mindless, maybe, in our connections. And often not present at all to all of the things that were happening under the surface of our social mask. The pandemic looked another way has been, at least for me, a very long retreat. A very long retreat. A vacation from mindless engagement and unsustainable movement, wherein lots of personal demons have had to be encountered and faced. I have had to face a lot of my own demons this year. One was an illness while living alone. I actually had COVID, as some of you know, and I really had to encounter my fear of dying alone without my family. The fear of not saying goodbye or what was still undone. The fear of losing my children to illness. One of my sons would have been very vulnerable to COVID. The fear of losing my country to racism, paranoia, and violence. I know a lot of us share that. The fear of losing the school, which is still just a seedling. I think the worst thing, actually, besides my children, that was the worst thing, but the fear of becoming peculiar, misunderstood, and of being profoundly lonely. The list could really go on. This was the year of fear. But what I noticed is that when I walked through each fear, with the exception of losing my children, that's a real high bar, I found myself really pretty much being able to navigate it most of the time. And I never would have had the opportunity to navigate it, I think, without this experience. More than that, there was some kind of jeweled lining inside when I walked through it. Something like I had, cracked a geode and gone inside. Something a little bit magical and even some awe. I didn't know the depths of some of my being before this year. And I probably still don't. But it helped. In healing world, we would call entering into this the void, the place that we fear like crazy, place of annihilation, or what we think is annihilation. But when we let ourselves, go there, we find the void just teeming with life. And so it was for me this year, not just loss. A challenge, yes, but an enormous gain. And these are not just the words of an isolate introvert. I mean, okay, I'm an introvert at heart, but this is much more than avoiding social anxiety. It is about finding truly deeper love. It is finding what in the silence I was too busy to sink into. And it was learning to truly tune into and respect my own rhythms. It was discovering what I really loved, actually, and what gave me pleasure. For example, I had the time to consider my home and what made me feel at home in the world. Here, on planet Earth, light, color, what I love to look at. There were things that I had neglected for years, personal things, like what I loved to put on my body, what was in my closets. And this sounds shallow, but it kind of wasn't. I had spent years and years caring for other people, rushing from this task to that task, from bills to homework to jobs and appointments. And during this year, I found a lot more time to really ask, what do I really want and what do I really love? What company do I really enjoy? What is important to me? And actually, because I was alone, most especially for me, was the spiritual practices and company I wanted to keep. Because in all of that silence, I managed to find great solace and many voices of love I might never have known. Now, that was my experience dealing with solitude, and I have been lucky. Other people have had far greater challenges, some dealing with absolutely no solitude, languishing children in their homes, no time, mental illness, or even death. And I can only give a deep bow to that. It wasn't my time for that particular challenge, but I have sort of felt that somewhere in all of our challenges, there was something for us to take from it. It wasn't just the story of loss. And even in grief, if we don't take the blessing that's there, the gifts of it, and we do rush right back into life without acknowledging it, we really have done that grief a great disservice. I think all I'm trying to bring today is just, a reminder of how all things pulsate, and that we were just so long overdue for this contraction into our deeper selves and our more interior lives. Celebration with each other is really important, but we were really, really oversaturated with it. Stadiums full of cheering crowds and sporting events and rock concerts and festivals and so on. And yet we got the opportunity to be a community in some places this year that strived together, that worked hard toward things that were truly important. And that's a deeper community. And these have been the gifts of the pandemic for me. And what I'm going to really encourage anybody that's listening to this to do, if you haven't already, is to really take a look at it, acknowledge the gifts that you've been given during this time, however hard it's been, however much loss has occurred, to allow at least some of the process itself to feed you, and to be willing to allow yourself to be changed. Allow all of us to be changed together. So thanks, and I will probably be back here in a couple weeks talking about the nature of relationship, and we'll be talking April 10th about the nature of grief, if you'd like to join for the program. And may we all be well until then.